What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Rantin Review Pro Wrestling. It is unexpectedly one of the biggest days of the calendar year in 2025 for wrestling. We are here at AEW All Out 2025, which will be going up on the same day as WWE WrestlePalooza. So we're going to be talking about All Out. In this video, we'll have another video talking about WrestlePalooza. But this show started off with Cope and Christian, the first time in 20 years in their hometown, teaming up to take on one of the greatest tag teams of the modern era and possibly of all time in FTR. The match was a decent match. We had the greatest hits here, but something I noticed right off of the bat is that this crowd seems a little bit quiet. A little bit too quiet for my liking. I don't know if it's the afternoon start time or whatever, or they're just not into the show. I mean, they did sell out. This show had over like 13,000 people here, I think, at this arena. So it's a big crowd, it's a big show, and it's a big return. And in fact, we got the return of Beth Phoenix, now known as Beth Copeland, coming out to try to help her husband during this match. This unfortunately resulted in the post-match where FTR did attack Beth and give her a spike pile driver, which looked pretty nasty. And we have now taken this Cope and Christian and FTR feud up to another level now. So where that's going from here, I'm curious to see how much more brutal it's going to get. It's AEW, so it's probably going to get pretty brutal. Something that was also brutal was, unfortunately, the return of Eddie Kingston in a match against Big Bill. The match I cannot recommend it. It's not a very good match. Big Bill did his best, but Eddie Kingston, who himself will tell you, was not big in a cardio, looked like he was pretty blown up in this match about the 5-minute mark. And it was rough for him to get through this match. Again, Kingston's been out with an injury. He suffered a leg injury, I think early this year or late last year against Gabe Kidd over in New Japan, and he's been out for quite some time. When you're out for that long time, even the guys in the best shape in the world will tell you, about ring conditioning and stuff. Anybody who's done anything athletics knows it's one thing to train, it's another thing to actually do the sport, whatever it is football, wrestling, whatever. So Kingston blown up in this match, clearly. A couple of botches, even botched the finish. Kind of a lukewarm reception to it. Hook came out to try to help make the save after Big Bill lost, and they tried to beat up on him. But it looks like this might be a new combination, but I don't think the crowd here, at least in Toronto, reacted to it too well. What they did react to well was MJF and Mark Briscoe in a thumbtacks and tables match. The match starts out, this match is very well crafted. You have them establishing very early on that the thumbtacks are a threat. So Mark Briscoe takes the thumbtacks, he lays them out all on the ring mat. MJF doesn't want to get in the rings. Great ring psychology kind of stuff, playing with the crowd's emotions. MJF even took some of the tables that Mark Briscoe set up outside the ring, and it looked like he was going to go for a table spot, but then he folds the table up and throws it back underneath the ring, pissing off the crowd more because MJF's a great heel. They've teased for a long time who was going to get thrown into the Tacks first. It was Mark Briscoe, who got Tacks in his head, and his cheeks, and his arms, and his back, and his legs, and the back of his head, the top of his head. There's probably thumbtacks in his underwear. And some pretty nasty tack spots. Max does get his comeuppance. Max does get thrown into the Tacks quite a few times. They took some pretty dangerous spots. They were going for some really crazy stuff near the end of this match. I think in this match we also saw tributes to Sabu, Cactus Jack, and The Undertaker all in the same match, which goes along with, by the way, with Adam Copeland's internet-breaking tribute to John Cena and that match earlier on to begin the night. But Max thought he was going to get the win, didn't get the win after two froggy bows, one through a table that was also covered in tacks, and a J Driller. Mark Briscoe finally gets his revenge on MJF. The two of them can now go in their separate directions or maybe continue this feud. I think this feud has been great for Mark Briscoe, who the fans have a natural like for Mark Briscoe, but this is now when he needs to get some wins against some of the upper card guys so he can be considered a legitimate thing. I look at Mark Briscoe right now the same way I kind of looked at Mick Foley during the Attitude Era. It's very similar to how Mick Foley was in the Attitude Era and WWF back in the late 90s. So Briscoe getting a big win. Happy to see this for him. We then had the Hurt Syndicate, the return of MVP to the ring against Ricochet in the Gates of Agony, or the Demand, or whatever stupid name they gave themselves. This match was okay. They didn't tease MVP getting in. MVP starts the match. I think this match was a little bit disjointed. It had a lot of great side spots, but again, the crowd wasn't reacting to things the way I thought they would. Again, this is either a knock against the crowd or a knock against AEW's lead into the show, that the crowds just aren't into these matchups that they put on for this card. It could be a combination of the both, but the crowd kind of cooled off again after that hot MJF Mark Briscoe match. The crowd cooled off a bit here. MVP getting pinned by Ricochet to end the match, and again, the idea here is to help elevate some of these younger stars. And the Gates of Agony, very talented. I think some personality work, some character work is probably what's in store and what can really push them over the top. You can give them the win against the Hurt Syndicate, but we're going to have to get to know, especially the Gates of Agony, a lot more than we know the Gates of Agony. Might be good for some interviews, might be good for some segments or something like that to kind of get them over as characters on the show. Ricochet's already well over with the AEW crowd, and so is the Hurt Syndicate. So next up, we have the TBS Championship. Mercedes Mone defending against the first ever AEW Women's World Champion, Riho. A match that I didn't think about for a long time when Mercedes came, because Riho is in and out of AEW. She's been in and out of AEW since the beginning. Her and Takeshita, kind of the same thing. But Riho coming back, it's always kind of a special thing. She has this kind of special aura about her because she is this tiny little girl and she is the first ever AEW Women's World Champion. So she's always going to have that kind of mystique about her. And seeing her against Mercedes, seeing Mercedes, who's very much become current AEW Women's roster, against the first champion in AEW's Women's roster from another era of AEW, I was curious to see how this match is going to play out. It could be great or it could be a total disaster. It's a great exhibition between two wrestlers, but Mercedes won this match. It felt pretty standard. I've definitely seen a lot better from Riho and definitely seen a lot better on Mercedes. There is something that feels off about this show at this point. We've had a couple of good bright spots, but this doesn't feel like the usual AEW pay-per-view. And again, I don't think it's... Again, I said maybe it's the noon hour, but All In was at the same time in the afternoon, so I'm not so sure. Maybe, again, it seems like things are... This is not going to be... I can already tell... The reason why I'm saying this is that I can already tell that by the end of this show, this is probably not going to be in my top half of AEW pay-per-views this year at this point. Next up on the show was the Unified Championship on the line. Kazuchika Okada defending against Mascera Dorada and Konosuke Takeshita. Takeshita and Okada, of course, members of the Don Callis family, the modern-day Bobby Heenan family. And this has been simmering under the surface for a while. Okada being the champion, being the guy with the legacy coming over from New Japan, Takeshita being a young and up-and-comer. I've said oftentimes, if in an alternate universe, if AEW didn't exist and things had gone the way they usually would in New Japan, this probably would be happening in New Japan right now. I could easily see Takeshita finally being the guy to come along to take the ace position from Okada. There's a lot to talk about with that as far as probably more New Japan centered focused video about how the fact that torch really didn't get passed over there. But we're seeing it here in AEW, and they're selling it on commentary as Okada being a senpai and Takeshita being the young boy for Okada. And that's the way they're kind of doing it, because Okada, of course, is a little bit ahead of Takeshita, a little bit older. He's achieved all these things. Takeshita, of course, winning this year's G1 Climax in New Japan, a tournament Okada has won 4 times. I'm sure Okada's like, yeah, the only reason you won is because I wasn't in it, you know. So they have that going on. Meanwhile, Mascera Dorada comes in as the outsider, and he is by far the star of this match. I think this match was structured extremely well. Dorada being probably the least known of the 3 in this match, getting this chance to highlight what he can do against guys who are held up in high regard in the AEW universe. And Okada played his role well. This is the best role always for Okada, to be a champion and to be really, really good and somebody that everybody else can't really beat. And the Continental rules, which means there's no interference allowed in these Unified Championship matches, So Okada has to win clean every single match, basically, almost. Takeshita playing the young, hungry up-and-comer was great in this match, but again, both of them really did a great job of highlighting Dorada, and one of them, he hurricanrana both Okada and Takeshita off the top rope at the same time. I've never seen that before. That was really cool, and this match felt like an AEW. And I was like, this is an AEW pay-per-view match. This match is highly recommended. I definitely suggest you watching it. Okada comes out with the victory with the Rainmaker, hitting Takeshita with a pretty nice drop kick that had Takeshita falling back like a plank board and hitting the back of his head on the bottom rope, which took him out. Okada hit the Rainmaker on Dorado, nobody to break it up, and Okada gets the 3 count and retains this championship. I wonder how many defenses that is for Okada. After the match, Okada's rubbing it in Takeshita's face, and Don Callis is like, hey, it's all good. Hey, yeah, the competition, yeah. You know this is going to go somewhere. Now, again, I would really love to see this match, the final one-on-one between the two of them, happen at Wrestle Kingdom. Or maybe that weekend of Wrestle Kingdom, if they're still doing the co-branded shows. But I would like this to be that one-on-one between the two of them be there. But I think they're going to have it either at Full Gear or World's End. I think it's going to be a AEW match. And again, that's something to dive into when we talk about New Japan a little bit more in the future. Then we had, now we're feeling like an AEW pay-per-view now. Jon Moxley taking on Darby Allin in a coffin match. And yeah, we went there. You knew there was going to be blood. You knew there was going to be gore. You knew there was going to be people getting stabbed with various items. We've had forks. We had Marina Shafir taking off the bottom rope. We had Darby Powell driving power bombs suplexed into the damn coffin. At one point in time, Moxley tries to set up the open coffin vertically outside the ring, and I didn't understand what he was doing until I saw where he positioned, and I was like, oh, Darby's coming at that torpedo. It perfectly landed. Both of them wound up falling into the coffin falling over, and the cover getting covered on top of them. It was pretty good. All the Death Riders came out, including the newest member, Daniel Garcia, at one point in time to help out Mox, but he sends them all to the back, including Marina. And the match continues on until Mox starts to get into some serious trouble. A lead pipe gets involved here, and it's not looking good for the leader of the Death Riders, whose ear is bleeding, who's just a mess at this point in time. And then, of all people, Pac, who we had all forgotten about. Or some of us had forgotten about, and I thought maybe he's not in the Death Riders anymore because they just put Daniel Garcia in. But no, Pac is still part of AEW. He's still part of the Death Riders. He came in here, a nasty razor's edge outside the ring onto the coffin for Darby, and that was all it took to put Darby in the coffin, in a body bag in the coffin, and Moxley just, who's spent at this point in time, lying on his back in the ring after almost getting smothered by a plastic bag from Darby Allin that Bryan Danielson, who's at ringside, just happened to have with him at ringside, even though he's not supposed to get involved. It didn't matter. Darby lost the match. Mox kicks the coffin closed with his foot, and all the Death Riders come out, and they all carry the coffin containing the carcass of Darby Allin away from the ring. It was a great visual. Mox is screaming at the camera, "This is not my fault. I didn't ask for this. This is his fault. He asked for this." And this looks like this is going to go somewhere further. And it also looks like the Death Riders are stronger than ever. Now with a new member and a returning member in Pac, I think we're going to see a lot more from Jon Moxley's crew for the foreseeable future in AEW. And Bryan Danielson continually being disappointed at the fact that nobody, with the exception of Hangman Adam Page, has been able to get the best of the Death Riders. And that Hangman victory might seem like a setback more than a ending of a story if the Death Riders continue to gain strength. And a match I wasn't all that looking forward to tonight, the AEW Women's World Championship was on the line in a fatal four-way match. Timeless Toni Storm, the AEW Women's World Champion, defending against Thekla, who's the latest new Rage addition to the AEW Women's roster that is continuing to improve. We had Chris Statlander, who's there as well, and Jamie Hayter. And first off, before this, there was the announcement that Orange Cassidy will be coming back to AEW this Wednesday. So that was a pretty exciting story to hear. And in this match, we had the appearance of Wheeler Yuta. And the Death Riders have been kind of recruiting Chris Statlander for a while now. So they're, again, the AEW doesn't tell stories though. But again, this thing that's been simmering underneath the surface with Stat being approached by Marina Shafir, being approached by John Moxley himself, being approached by Wheeler Yuta here as well. And you had this cool promo package before the match of Tony Storm narrating the 4 ways to die and talking about how Jamie Hayter was the British brute who was trying to avenge her championship losses, and Chris Statlander was from outer space whose personal issues were causing her problems, and then Thekla, she's just a crazy bitch. But as timeless Tony Storm only can do. I will say one thing I did notice about this match, both at the beginning and at the end of the match. There is this dude in the front row with the red hat. You probably should put him on a watch list and keep him as far away from Tony Storm as possible. He was very, very adamantly angry with Tony Storm to a unnatural degree, and his reaction at the end of the match. Yeah, so and the shock of all shocks in this match, which was a decent Fatal 4-Way match, but the biggest shock came from the ending, is that with using Wheeler Yuta's seatbelt maneuver, Chris Statlander gets the shocking flash pin on timeless Tony Storm and becomes the new AEW Women's World Champion. The crowd was shocked. I was shocked. Everybody was apparently shocked. Tony Storm would remain shocked for 5 minutes. It would take her 5 minutes to get back up the ramp because she would just look back in the ring like, I can't believe that happened. I do think if it was time for this to happen and if Chris Statlander was going to get this championship, it would have to be something like this. And every once in a while in these Fatal 4-Way matches where you have somebody that's unexpected to win, you should have somebody that wins that's unexpected in these Fatal 4-Ways that keeps them interesting and doesn't make it like, oh, that these two people are just filler because the real conflict is between these other two stars. That wasn't even the case in this match. There was no real personal conflict between these 4 women. Tony Storm has basically run the women's division for the last year and a half. And there was nobody else. She beat Mercedes and she beat Athena, so there was nobody else really for Tony Storm to climb up. She was now completely at the top of the mountain by herself. I think it was the right time to do this, and it mixes up the women's division a little bit more. So we'll see where this goes. Harley Cameron comes out to the ring, to feel the wrath with the new Women's World Champion as they celebrate. And there's a story there with Willow. There's a story there with the Death Riders. So there's a lot now. The women's division is now focused a lot on Chris Statlander. She's got all of these little spokes coming out of her now being the women's champion, again, with Harley Cameron, with Willow, with the Death Rider. So there's a lot going into this. So I'm curious to see. They've got something cooked up. I want to see how it works out. And Tony Storm's going to be fine. We'll see where she goes in the future. The only person I worry about coming out of this match is Jamie Hayter, who has returned and gone left and returned and left and returned and left. Hopefully they can find something, or she can find something where she shines, because she didn't shine in this match. Again, in the match itself, it was really Thekla that shined. Tony Storm's already a made star, and of course Chris winning the championship at the end. The only person that kind of got overshadowed was, unfortunately, again, Jamie Hayter. Bandito defends the AEW World Tag Team Championships in a Fatal 4-Way ladder match against the Young Bucks, Jet Speed, and the Don Callis family team of Mascera and Josh Alexander. Fun match. Again, these ladder matches, these tag team ladder matches are always great. Lots of crashes. Some innovative stuff in this match at one point in time before the guys lift up the ladder while Kevin Knight is at the top and dump him out of the ring through the table. There was a point where all of the guys hit dives except for Brody King, who chose to put Speedball Mike Bailey through a Gonzo bomb outside of the ring onto a ladder that was suspended across to the announce table. It's a lot of craziness going on in this match. There were the usual ladder match issues where guys would stand up and the titles would be right behind them. But no, I'm going to go jump off and hurt myself to hurt this other guy. But that aside, this was a fun, great ladder tag team match. No complaints about it. I do suggest you watch it. The winners of the match and retaining the championships are Bandito, or Brodido, as I should say. Bandito and Brody King, continuing their reign as one of the more popular tag teams that have emerged out of AEW in the last 6 months. We weren't done there, though, because after the match, Jack Perry, who's been hinted at being the on the Being the Elite YouTube channel for the last couple of weeks. He makes an appearance, attacks the Young Bucks. Of course, they were all part of that. Started out good, but eventually fizzled out Elite angle from last year with the attack on Tony Khan. Jack Perry's been away for a while from AEW. He's back now. Apparently has become a face. Although the crowd was starting to chant "You deserve it" when they were about to give him the BTE trigger, but then the lights went off. Now this felt a little weird. We already saw Killswitch come back and return because Nick Wayne was injured at the last pay-per-view. So this kind of felt weird and off. But it still worked for what it was. It would have been cool if we hadn't seen him return last month. But Luchasaurus is officially back, not Killswitch. They reused the same promo footage of him coming up from the doctor's chair and coming back, and he gets into the ring. He obliterates the Young Bucks, and we have the reunion of A Boy and His Dinosaur, complete with their original music. So everyone's doing the oh, whoa, 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 whoa. That is a throwback now. It is funny how long AEW has been around now that something like this can feel nostalgic. You also get the announcement that there's going to be a tag team match coming up this Wednesday. Takeshita and Okada are going to be on the same team against the conglomeration. As I mentioned before, they strongly implied that Orange Cassidy is coming back. We then had a segment with Darby Allin in the back, who was still in a coffin. The Death Riders are sent away by Jon Moxley, which was a mistake because Darby comes out of the coffin, hits Mox in the neck with a pipe, puts him in the bag, puts flame on. This was a live stunt. Puts flammable liquid on the bag and said, "You wanted to set AEW on fire." Well, and Darby goes once again, this little pyromaniac tries to set somebody on fire, sets the bag on fire. Now, this looks like a fireproof bag, and it looks like Moxley was well safe in this, and they had a guy with a fire extinguisher. The flame only caught on for a little bit. It looked cool for the second it caught on, but that's pushing the limits here of this feud. So where is it going? Obviously, Darby and Jon Moxley are not over. This is going to continue probably into some sort of inferno match or something. God knows where this is going, and God knows where these two guys are going to take it. Little tone-deaf commentary afterwards, though, where they're talking about, like, if this violence keeps to escalate, I mean, how much farther can it go? Guys, do you check to take the temperature of the room right now in the world? I'm not going to get into it. Yeah, anyway, so this all set up one final announcement that Tony Khan, we are definitely doing retro AEW. Tony Khan is going to have a special announcement this coming week on Dynamite. What that's going to be, we don't know yet. I'm sure there's going to be speculation, so I'm going to check out the post-match commentary show and see what that's all about. But this now leads into our main event, the AEW Men's World Championship on the line. Hangman Adam Page defending against the TNT champion, Kyle Fletcher. This is the biggest match in Kyle Fletcher's career. He is headlining a sold-out pay-per-view with over 13,000 people at it. So Fletcher dominated most of this main event match for the first half of it. This match has been over 30 minutes. They did the time cue, and it's funny, the time cues in AEW, they've been intermittent with them. They used to do them at 15 minutes, and now they do it at you reach halfway of the time limit of the match. I technically always prefer the 5-minute time limit calls, but I'm a New Japan fan and an old Crockett fan. That's what I'm used to. But either use them or don't use them. The thought is that, oh God, this is going to go to an hour time limit. And once you hear time limit cues in AEW, because that's been the case in the past, that did not happen on this night. They did not go to the 60-minute time limit, but they certainly brutalized each other. And the biggest takeaway, which has been kind of a theme of the night, where it was that way earlier with Thekla, it was that earlier with the Gates of Agony and a couple other stars. Chris Statlander is another one. They're putting forth people and trying to build up new stars based off their existing stars. And this was a way for Kyle Fletcher to really kind of establish himself as somebody that's legitimately in that upper main event scene. He had that great feud with Ospreay 6 months ago that put him up there, but they haven't done much with him since. He's back in that spotlight now. I thought he did a great job. I thought Hangman has taken on the reins of putting the company on his shoulder. He is a great character to be the world champion right now as a face champion, and helping some of these younger heel wrestlers like a Kyle Fletcher get themselves established. It was a risky main event to do on this weekend, but I think it paid off because the match was really good. It was excellent. It was well done. I do recommend you watching it. Don Callis was at ringside. Now, the stipulation was that if there was interference that not only would Fletcher lose the match, but he'd lose the TNT Championship, so we weren't going to get any of those Don Callis family shenanigans in this one. But as a match, again, I do recommend it. There are some scary spots in here, but not the usual Kyle Fletcher scary spots. Both men paid homage. We saw Hangman do the V-trigger and attempt at one-wing angel. Of course, he was aligned with Kenny Omega. He also did the house call for Swerve Strickland. We did see Kyle Fletcher hit a hidden blade. He did try to go for the Stormbreaker, a la his mentor Will Ospreay. At the end, it was the Buckshot Lariat that finally scored the pinfall win for Hangman Page as he successfully defended the AEW World Championship, closing out the show with a great wrestling match. And I already noticed this, and I'm even noticing it myself. But I'm watching the end of the show, and I think me and other people are expecting, because the other company has made a thing of this now, expecting some big surprise return or debut. We already had a night full of them, so I really didn't need that in this match, and it's kind of refreshing to see a wrestling show end with the main event, and the winner of the main event being the point. And not to spur on something else, but I'm sure people will have some storytelling criticisms of that. But overall, this wasn't one of the best AEW shows. I will say it's in my lower half of the AEW pay-per-views this year, but it wasn't a bad show. The first bit of it was rough. The first 5 matches, there were 2 of the first 5 matches were good. A lot of it was the Eddie Kingston one. Again, I think that's just Eddie having ring rust. He'll be back to his normal self in a couple of weeks. And some of the other things just didn't hit. A lot of surprises were cool. It was cool to see Beth Phoenix now debuting in AEW, instantly in a big spot with FTR. I love what I saw, the big shock of Chris Statlander dethroning Timeless Tony Storm as AEW Women's World Champion, and a lot of other things that happened on this night. So, good thumbs up. We got the return of Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus. So, overall, a good pay-per-view. Not the best one AEW's done this year, but a definite solid. Well, worth your time watching. I would just say, just keep in mind the first hour of this show is a little shaky, but that's just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think. Let your voice be heard in the comment box below. Did you enjoy AEW All Out 2025 from Toronto? What'd you think of the crowd? What'd you think of the main event? What'd you think of the shocking returns and the shocking title changes? Again, let your voice be heard in the comment box below. Also, don't forget to share this video on Instagram or Twitter or whatever you talk about wrestling on social media. I do appreciate it. It does help other people view the channel. Until next time, I'll see you guys. I'll be catching up the highlights for WrestlePalooza, so we'll be doing a video on that soon. So again, hit the notification bell so you know when that video comes out. And until then, I'll see you guys here for more news, rumors, and reviews on Rant and Review Pro Wrestling. Have a good day.